Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Richard Skipper Celebrates. Before we start today's show, I want to give a reminder that today marks 243 days since our theaters were shut down due to COVID. They're buildings, but theater thrives. I think of all the ghost lights in the theater, and I think of all the people that make theater come alive. This show is all about celebrating artists and their bodies of worth. That's W-O-R-T-H. And I am very excited about today's guest because, first of all, DeForest. There's so much that you may or may not know about him. He gives and gives and gives to the community. He's given us so many gifts, but one of the greatest gifts that he has given to cabaret and to the entertainment industry is Doris Dear. And before I bring Ray on, I'd like to introduce those of you, maybe one or two, who are not familiar with Doris Dear. Here is Doris Dear.
Doris, it's Doris Dear. She's a glamorous gal, she'll become your best pal when she's here.
Who's here?
She's here,
Doris Dear.
It's Doris, with the contact in hand. She's the perfect housewife, and her rumpus room might have a hand.
Yeah, maybe.
It's Doris and her dear friends. They live up in the sky, but for the chance to sing and dance, her friends might also buy. It's Doris. It's Doris Dear. She's that girl on the street. She'll show up with a speech. You'll adore when she knocks on your door. There's her one. It's Doris Dear's house.
Now, if that does not make you feel great, check your pulse. Hello, Ray. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Richard? Nice to
That
see
is
you.
just the most exciting promo. And as soon as I saw that, I reached out to you and I said, who created this for you? And not surprising, this is all your brainchild. Before we get to Doris Dear and all the other wonderful things that you are doing, I want to ask you, how are you doing really in the midst of this crazy time that we find ourselves in?
Well, I have to say it's, my approach, because of the way I was brought up, is always to leave with the positive and try to find the positive in everything. It's how my artistry has evolved over years. Mm-hmm. And I, even in bad times, and I've been through many, I try to stay positive about it. And, it's up and down. I mean, luckily I have an amazing partner who's there for me. And when I'm up, he may be down, or when he's down, I'm up. And it goes back and forth. So we support each other through that. And, come on, I'm an artist and I'm not on Ritalin. So it's like a roller coaster ride. It's like, here we go over the hill.
I always say, with my husband, Danny, I always say that there is a purple heart waiting for you when you get to the pearly gates. For anyone who lives with an artist, you know what it's like. We have our up days, we have our down days. When I interviewed Donna McKechnie very early on, when I started doing these interviews, she said, those of us who in the arts probably have a better grasp of dealing with this because we know what it's like to live from gig to gig to gig. And right now, I just think we're all on hiatus to some degree and getting there. But you're not on hiatus. You were just picked up, Doris Dear, by Broadway Direct. Can you tell us a little bit about how that happened? Explain to everyone what Broadway Direct is and how you are bringing Doris Dear to a whole new audience through streaming.
So it's Broadway on Demand.
Broadway on Demand, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right. So it's Broadway on demand. When COVID happened, I just, we were all, I was booked for 6, 7, 8 months. And I live in an artist building here in New York City. So everyone I knew was busy working. In my hallway alone, I have 2 jazz artists, 2 Broadway dancers, like a Broadway orchestra person. Like, we were all working full time. I've been working full time as an actor for 42 years. And then it stopped. And we all just literally one day stood in our hallway like, what do we do? Like, I don't know what to do. So then I sort of saw everybody jump online. Mm-hmm. Suddenly, everybody knew what a Zoom was. And everyone started standing in their bathrooms, because we all know it has the best acoustics, and singing in front of their shower curtain. And I watched, and, it was just artists trying to be artists, because no matter what happens, even if you leave the industry and do something else, there's always that artist within who wants to do their art. But I just kind of, like, I've been a producer for a lot of years as well, and I'm a stickler about things. Like, I was watching people and thinking, why are they in front of that bookcase, and what are those books behind them? What are they reading? I want to know. Like, and wait, where did they have that shower curtain? Oh, it's fabulous. Like, I'm all about the environment and how we do it. Because for me, any performance, no matter what it is, on any level, is an audition. It's always a chance to be seen, to put your best foot forward. And you just never know. The journey of the artist, you never know. So I kind of just wanted to wait, because at first we thought, it's going to be a month. Then it's going to be 8 weeks and we'll be back. Then 10 weeks. Then it was like, August? October, now 2021. And we all know the truth is it's going to be further. So I just kind of sat back and watched and really thought it out. And, I'm known within the cabaret community right now with Doris Dear as a singer and the drag queen. And I just thought, I don't know that I want to sing right now. Like, I do so much, I've done many things in my acting career. I've hosted television shows, and I thought I want to combine what I do. So I started researching. I have a great mentor, Eric Ober, who was head of CBS News for years and years. He was the one who kind of discovered me in local television and brought me on to HGTV and the Food Network. And then when I became a television producer, I was a senior producer on a major talk show. He was sort of my mentor that I would call at midnight and say, I've been here for 16 hours and I don't know what to do. And he talked me through whatever was happening.
Could I have his phone number, please?
Yeah, right?
Yes.
And he's just, like, I just kind of took it in and tried to figure out. And then, I have a great agent over at UTA, and we talked, and I was like, okay, everyone's doing all this stuff for free, but this is a long-term engagement here. How do we figure out how to at least make something? We have to figure out as artists, because I don't know how to, like, when I was 30, I thought, well, if it doesn't work out, I can go back to college. I can go be a doctor or a vet. I'm 62. I have no desire to do anything. I don't know how to do anything. I'm
right behind you.
Yeah. So it's like, this is the only career I know. I have never carried a tray. I've never had to work in anything except what I do. So I thought, well, I just have to do what I do. So how am I going to do that? How am I going to make it so that I can make a living again? What steps can I take? So I worked on this show, put it together, decided not to sing for many reasons. One, everyone already kind of knows I sing. There's plenty of videos, but I wanted to do something else. And I found out that if you sing and then you charge for that and you show it more than once, you're responsible for licensing rights, which means mucho dollars, which I don't have no mucho dollars to be spending. So doesn't Doris Dear have that stuffed under a cushion in the Rumpus Room in Staten Island? Yeah. It's in Staten Island and the ferry's down. I can't get over there anymore. Yeah. So thought, okay, the singing's out because so I put this show together. I worked with Blake Allen, who is an amazing composer and writer.
Absolutely.
He wrote my theme song because I called him because we've worked together, and I said, I'm doing this thing. He said, I want to be involved. And I have a funny story. So he writes this theme song. We go back and forth with lyrics and what it's going to be. And then he sends me a recording, and it's like on his electric keyboard. And I wrote him back and I said, well, it's good. I really like it, but it sounds a little like electric keyboard-ish. Like, can we enrich that? Or he's like, so I get an email back. That's the demo. I have a 16-piece orchestra that's recording for you and 15 Broadway singers. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll shut up. I'll go back to my corner and have a cocktail. I felt so stupid. He was like, Ray, really? You thought I'd stop? I was like, no, I didn't know.
Can you speak a little closer into the microphone because it is breaking up a little bit?
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Yeah, that'll be great. Because this will be saved for podcast. Going back to that, I mean, I remember years ago I performed in Atlantic City, and I worked with the first show that I did. They worked with tracks. For all of you who sing with tracks, God bless you. I can't deal with it. It's not for me. I can't breathe with the tracks. I want to feel. And they sent the demo tape. And I said, oh, my God, this sounds like roller rink music. And the producer of the show, and she may be watching now, but the producer of the show said, oh, Richard, don't worry. When you get in there, it's going to sound like a full orchestra and it's going to sound great and everything. Well, guess what? It never sounded anything more than roller rink music. And I was never happy with that. But when I was listening to what Blake Allen did, and kudos to you, Blake, it captures the feel of a 1960s television special. And the way that you have presented Doris Dear to all of us, for me, it takes us back to that era. And you do such a great job. And I want to talk a little bit about how the evolution of Doris Dear and how she came into our lives. But I want to know a little bit more about Ray DeForest as well. We've learned a lot about you through Doris Dear. I'm assuming that you did grow up in Staten Island. And
yes.
And of course, Doris grew out of your mom, Taffy. But what was your childhood like? Do you have brothers and sisters?
So I always say that all the stories I tell in my shows about my family are true. Excuse me. They're all true. I mean, they're theatricalized for theater, but they're all true stories. So I grew up in Staten Island, total mid-century, post-war, middle class, 3-bedroom, 1-bath house, but we had a gigantic Rumpus Room downstairs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I think about it. My parents, when they were having those parties downstairs in the Rumpus Room, they were 35 years old. Well, of course they had parties downstairs and drank too much and smoked too much. Of course, they were 35 years old.
And where were you when these parties were going on?
So I had a sister who actually passed away a year ago from a brain aneurysm. She was 4 years older. We were upstairs generally in bed, but we would sneak down the stairs and we would watch in this smoke-filled where they were playing Broadway albums, the CBS Masterworks Broadway albums, and we would listen to them singing, giggling and laughing and just having such a great time. And it was really, and then my mom and dad would come over and my dad would take us back up to bed and we would go to bed, sort of.
And did your parents...
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
But of course, if we would stay up and listen because you could hear in the vent, because we had, events and you could hear them downstairs, and they would put on, when they thought we were asleep, they would put on the George Carlin album, and or the big one was when Hair came out and they put Hair on and they listened to Hair and talked about how, oh my God, Hair, it's so it's so avant-garde.
Well, your parents sound so cool. And did you go to the theater a lot? Did you go to concerts? What was the art situation with your family?
So it's interesting because, when you grow up on Staten Island, everyone on Staten Island goes to the city to work, but then they never would go in there any other way. They were like, why would I go to the city? We live on Staten Island. But my mother was a model and she was used to being in the city all the time. And my dad worked in Brooklyn and he was in the city a lot too. So my mother would take my sister and Diane. We would take the train, the Staten Island Rapid Turtle, the fastest train in 5 boroughs, the city. And we would take that and the ferry and a subway, and we would go to Schraff's on 5th Avenue, where she went as a model. And then we would go to Radio City. We would go to my first Broadway show she ever took me to was Funny Girl with Streisand, because I would see the poster all the time and I'd say, what is that poster? I love that poster. She was like, enough with the poster. I'm just going to take you. And I don't really remember anything about it because I was so young. But the only thing I remember about it, which is so strange, was the rat-a-tat-tat number, which wasn't in the movie. But I just remember rat-a-tat-tat, ba-da-dum-ba-rat-a. That's the number I remember. I don't know why. I have a thing for doughboys. What can I say? And she took me to the Hello Dolly, Irene. I mean, all the big musicals during that time we went to. And she loved taking us to Radio City. It was $5. You got a movie, you got the ballet, you got the orchestra, the dueling organs, you got the whole thing. It was and the Rockettes. And it was $5. And she would get in on a special entrance because she was a so-called famous model. And she worked that title for as long as she could.
Good for her. That's great.
I wonder where I learned from.
And what was the defining moment for you when you decided that you were going to dedicate your life to a career in the theater?
So I didn't do theater at all. I had no interest. In my senior year in high school, I was dating a girl. I was also dating a boy. This was 1975. What can I say? And the girl I went to an all-boys Catholic school. She went to the all-girls Catholic school. She was in theater. She was really tall. And she had one of the leads in Irene. And she said to me, they need someone else tall on stage. Everybody's short. Would you do this? And I said, well, I guess. What do I have to do? She goes, well, they need you to play the butler. And I said, oh, I didn't know what that meant. So I played the butler and I got to be funny. And that was it. It was over. I was like, whatever. So I go to college.
My first big role, I
on a
played a
swimming
butler.
scholarship to, Oh,
No, go ahead.
see?
No,
Great
in the
mind.
Unsinkable Molly Brown.
So, can you hear me? Yeah.
I can. Yes.
Okay. So I went to college on a swimming scholarship and I was in a pool all of my life. I mean, I was a swimmer. They thought I was going to the Olympics. I was rated on the East Coast, blah, blah, blah. It's just what I did, and quite honestly, growing up as a little gay kid, it was my way of sort of proving to the world that I was something, that I wasn't just a little gay kid, sissy gay kid, that my name was in the paper every week for swimming. And, oh, you play baseball, but is your name ever in the paper? No. So guess what? I'm an athlete. It was my way to get even. What can I say? It was my way to fight back. So I was at the University of Maryland doing Jesus Christ Superstar my freshman year with Ray Patterson, who then came to Broadway and was the lead in Hair. And they came to the pool because they were looking for a guy to be one of the guards who had a really great body, and he had to wear pink hot pants and a macrame harness. And they came up and they said, they asked my coach called me over and he said, you want to do this thing? I said, could I? He says, yeah, you can go do that. That's during our break. I said, okay. I did Jesus Christ Superstar. I met this girl, Angela Lomangino, who I'm still close with today. We became good friends. I discovered theater, and she said to me, I do this great summer stock thing up in the Catskills in the Borscht Belt every year. You live in a cabin, you wait on tables, and we do like 4 shows, and we do nightclub shows down in the cave. And she said, it's so much fun. And I have a friend, you sound kind of like my friend when you sing. I said, Angela, I don't sing. She goes, don't worry, we'll send his tape, his cassette tape. We'll send it in with your name. We'll take a picture. You'll get in the chorus. It'll be fun. Like we're doing Superstar. And I said, okay. We sent it in. I get a letter that I'm cast to go to show up, right? So I go up to the Catskills. It's just like in the movies, cabins in the back, Kay Ballard on the main stage, this whole thing. We go to the first day and I'm sitting around. I'm like, I don't know. What's theater? Whatever. They announced the cast. I'm Maximilian in Candide. I'm the Scarecrow in Wizard of Oz. And I'm one of the husbands in Company. And I'm like, I look at her, I'm like freak out, like Angela. She says, don't worry. And she got all the leads because she was amazing. She was going. She goes, we'll get you through it. I was like, I can't do this. She goes, you can do it at Summer Stock. Who cares? It was like death by fire. Like go in, fake it till you make it. I ended up choreographing. I never danced. Was not trained at all. I ended up choreographing downstairs, 3 shows downstairs. I did the leads. It was crazy. And that was theater. That was my first, I had done theater for a month before that. That's it. Went back to school. My sophomore year, I did shows. My junior year. And then in my junior year, I went to a Disney audition and got cast. And I quit my senior year of college. My parents were like, what are you talking about? So I'm going to Disney. I'm going to be a kid of the kingdom. I'm going to be a Mouseketeer. I'm going to be goofy. I'm going to blah, blah, blah. They were like, no, you're not. I go, yeah, I am. Bye. I had $100 and a bag. I'm leaving the cat a note.
Wow.
It really just,
Wow.
it was crazy.
But again, there has to be a moment when you said, I'm going to pursue this as a career. When, where, and how did that happen?
I think when I got to Disney, I mean, I was standing up there. There were, people that had been training for years, and I was scared to death. So I thought this is when I have to tell you that first time we did a parade at night, and I rolled down that castle float singing. I don't know. Hey na na na, hey na na na, Mickey Mouse is 60, like whatever. Like when I sang "When You Wish Upon a Star" and pointed at that castle, I'll never forget. I started weeping, like flowing out of me, doing my "When You Wish Upon a Star." Like I thought life couldn't, like this is the most amazing moment of my life. And I want to have more amazing moments like this. And I'm going to do this. And I'm going to make sure that I am as good as the people I'm standing up here with. Because that's the only fair thing. Because if I'm going to stand here, they got to know that I can do it. And they had no idea that I wasn't trained. They just thought.
So when you came back to New York, did you go back to Staten Island or did you find a place in the city? How did you begin to establish yourself?
I never came back. I never came back.
Well, you did eventually.
Well, kind of. I mean, after I did Disney for 5 years, then
Wow.
they basically didn't renew my contract and told me I was too old, and and a week later I was on a cruise ship sailing around the world doing my act. I got an act and singing on shows, and I went all around the world on ships, and then I moved to Denmark because I got an offer to produce, and all these shows in Denmark. And so I worked with this older gypsy from Broadway named Jean Nettles. And Jean was in like the original My Fair Lady, he was a newsboy in Gypsy. He did all that stuff on Broadway. And he went on tour in Europe in like the early 60s, met this woman, even though he was gay, he was closeted. He met this woman, married, had kids, and he was a producer and writer over there. And he had heard about me. I still don't really know how. He's passed away years and years ago. But he offered me a job. So I said, sure, why not? I was 26 years old. I moved to Copenhagen in the first week of January. It was like 20 below zero. I was like, what on earth have I done? But we produced close to 20 shows in Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. And we also brought the first Broadway show to Scandinavia. And I learned a lot from him. He was an amazing mentor. In fact, I connected with his son, who was like a little teeny kid back then, on Facebook about a year ago, who's now a major movie and television producer over in Copenhagen. So I did that. And then I decided, I was there for like 2 years, and then I thought I need to be back home in the US. I miss the US. And the world is great, but there's no place like home. So
did
I wanted
Taffy,
to see.
did your parents get a chance to visit you in Copenhagen? Okay, great.
Oh yeah, they were my biggest fans. They came to Disney twice a year. They came everywhere. They took cruises. Everything I did, they were always in the audience. They were always there. It was amazing how they just held me up, you know. And they were, we know as artists, there are times that you need holding up. And I would just get on, and especially I was traveling so much. I had friends, but they weren't family. They were friends because I was in shows with them. But man, when you're down, you need your family. And because I traveled so much, I didn't have that connection. So I would call mom and call dad. Dad would be like, "Come on, buck up, boy. You're from Staten Island. Go have a drink and stand up and get out there and do it."
Good for them.
Like that.
And
yeah,
so
I would go have a cocktail and then stand up and do it.
Well, you eventually made it back to New York, and you were very, very proactive in SAG. I'm assuming that you're also a member of Actors Equity. How did you get your equity card?
At summer stock. I was 20 years old. I got my equity card at 19 and my AFTR card at 20 and my SAG card at 21, because back then SAG and AFTR were separate. And I got them all because of work. I got them at summer stock was equity, and then Disney. When I got Disney, we filmed commercials and TV specials. So every time we did anything, they were like, "Guess what? You're part of the union now." I was like, "I am? Well, you have to be." "Oh, okay. How much is that?" "Don't worry, we'll take it out of your paycheck." "Okay."
No,
whatever. I don't know what that means.
Many people in our profession, they just coast through, but you are very proactive on both sides of the spotlight. When did you first start getting active on the business end of it? How many boards are you on right now?
Actually, I resigned from all my boards probably last fall, because I had served on many theater and nonprofit theater boards and just nonprofit LGBT boards. And I just needed a break. I mean, nonprofit work is great, and it's, it fills your soul. I think it's, at this point in my life, I've had great success. I've been able to be who I want to be and do what I want to do. And giving back is everything. I think it feeds your soul and you as a human being. And it's important to do, but it can also, excuse me for saying, suck the life out of you. So my husband and I made a decision that we were going to give 20% of our time to charity and nonprofit work. So that's how we started being on boards. And, basically, if you're on a board, you're raising money. Most boards, especially the bigger boards, you have to guarantee that you're going to raise a certain amount of money. It's $50,000, $100,000. It's like being a Broadway producer, and that's great. But I had reached the point where, I had reached the point on the board, on the boards that I was serving on, that I had sort of done everything I could do for them, and I felt like they needed new blood, because I think the way boards work, the best way they work, is when new blood is constantly coming in to bring fresh ideas, to sort of bring a new energy in. And I was one of those people on all those boards, But then it came time, I think, after 2, 3 years, it's like, okay, it's time to let somebody else come in, bring a new energy, and do that. And then I went on. So I kind of stopped my board work in the fall. I'm sure it'll come back.
Mhm.
But I've been giving, to charity work, and I mean, performing wise, I do charity work all the time. But I think it's important. I'm very active in my union now in SAG-AFTRA. Not so much equity, because I don't really work for equity and haven't in a long time, but for SAG-AFTRA, I work consistently for, and I'm on the LGBT committee, the sexual harassment committee, because I've been sexually harassed throughout my career and in my life as a young gay man. Um, so I work on the boards there. I'm part of the group that work to decide how to bring work back during COVID. It's through SAG-AFTRA and what the rules were going to be. I was part of that committee. So I go to convention every other year. I get elected by New York, by fellow actors, my peers, to represent them at the convention every 2 years, which I think is an amazing, amazing thing to do, to sit in a room with actors from all over the country to talk about what we think is good for us and how we can be better at what we do and protect our brothers and sisters in the union.
Right. Now, I'm not getting political, and I'm not going to go there, but I do want to ask you how political you are when it comes to the boards that you serve on. Are you really out there fighting, on behalf of all actors and everything? Obviously, with some of the boards that you just mentioned, that's a given. But how politically active were you? And with the climate that we've just gone through and still going through, were you very political prior to this?
I think I come from a political family. I mean, my mom, and if you've been to my show, you've heard the stories. My mom, she fought for women's rights. She had laws changed in the archdiocese for kids in Catholic schools after I was sexually attacked. She had laws changed at a major bank in New York, an international bank here, that she worked for, because they told she couldn't wear her pants to work, and she refused to be told that women were different than men. My dad was a vice president of the AFL-CIO for Bell Telephone. So I come from that. My sister was 4 years older, so she was on the cusp of the hippie craze. She marched for Black people of color in New York City, in Staten Island. A Black family moved into a neighborhood near us, and somebody burned their house down and wrote epitaphs on signs and left them there. And she put together a march with students from her high school and other high schools, and marched. And so I come from a politically active family. I mean, I look, Larry Kramer was a good friend of mine. You can't be friends with Larry. You couldn't be friends with Larry Kramer without being politically active.
I appreciate him
as well.
I appreciate him so much now. I remember when he was so with ACT UP and everything, and I was just this guy who was just putting my toes in the water, if you know what I mean. And I just thought, oh my God, this angry man. And, and I realize now, and it took me, when I saw The Normal Heart on Broadway, I said, thank God that this man came our way. And God bless the fact that you were friends with him.
Yeah, I first ran into Larry at an ACT UP meeting. I mean, I was at the height of my middle 20s being gay, discovered being gay, when the AIDS epidemic hit, and I went to an ACT UP, and he was screaming, and I was, oh my God, who is this guy? And he's scaring the crap out of me. And we talked, and then I left the country. And one of the reasons I took the job, actually, in Copenhagen and Denmark, I was at Disney, and people were dying left and right. And I would come back to New York, and I would go into the Village to see the friends who were my mentors as a young gay man, and they were gone. I would go to St. Vincent's and visit some of them, because people wouldn't go in the room because they were afraid. They wouldn't even give them food. They would leave it out front. So, I mean, I was really scared. And when the offer to go to Denmark, as far as I knew, because the political parties in the United States did nothing for us. As far as I knew, it was only a U.S. gay problem. So I thought, I can go to Denmark. There's no AIDS. I don't have to worry. So I went to Denmark. So it was one of the, it wasn't so much a real conscious thing about why I went, because I really went for the experience. I wanted to go, but it was definitely there. And the older I got and looked back, I realized that was a big deciding factor for me. But of course, after 2 years in Denmark, I realized, oh, it's everywhere. People are dying everywhere. And, I remember, was it USA Today, not USA Today, that's the news story, US News and World Report, I think it was, started publishing all the pictures of every person who died of AIDS every time it came out. And it would be pages and pages, little teeny. And I just remember getting that every month and looking at it and thinking, and seeing all my friends. They were all my friends. And I had a friend, I had a person that I went and saw, I remember, in St. Vincent's, who, these beautiful men in our industry just fading away. And he grabbed me and said, "Why aren't you sick? Why am I sick and why aren't you sick?" And that there's articles written about the people who didn't get sick and the guilt. And let me tell you, that was a guilt that I live with today. And it propels me to do whatever I can to fight for our community. Because when people bitch about pride and the commercial pride, whatever, all I know is I'm standing on a float on Bleecker Street, going through the village during that moment of silence. And I stand there tall, usually wearing a heel. And I'm there because of all those men who are counting on us to make sure that no one ever forgets what we went through. So Amen. That's it. Like, you can say what you want. You can say it's too commercial. I don't care. March for whatever reason you want to march, but don't forget why we march.
Absolutely. And be proud, whoever you are, of who you are. Very important. Well, we do.
And not easy.
We need to talk a little bit about Doris Dear. I, of course, know the evolution of Doris and how she came to be. And I'd like you to share that with everyone. And also, I'd like to know, how long did Doris live up here before she got out there?
Well, I did drag on and off. I worked for a nonprofit charity, a 501c3 charity that was drag based. We would raise money doing drag. So drag has always sort of been around. I think my mother made me wear a skirt and tights when I was a little boy because it was kind of in style and I kind of liked it. It's always sort of been there, but people.
I'm going to ask you a silly question.
Is your husband having sex with you as a girl? Go ahead, ask.
But I'm going to ask you a silly, what may come across as a silly question, but what do you think is the biggest misconception that people have about the world of drag?
I would say the biggest misconception is they think that it's a sexual thing. And drag is performance drag is not. There are people who cross dress. There are many. A very good friend of mine, Mark, you probably have seen him all over Instagram and the news. It's a guy, American in Germany, he's a straight married man who wears skirts and hose and heels to work every day. It's just part of who he is. I think people just think it's that there's many reasons to be fluid in the way you dress, or if you're a cross dresser or you do drag. But performance drag isn't sexual in nature at all. It's just a way of telling story and performing in a different way. Now, someone I know said once to somebody in an interview, well, most drag queens are musical theater people who didn't make it. Honey, I made it before, and I will make it after.
I headlined all over the country as Carol Channing and doing my own singing. I never lip sync. And yet there are people who feel like I can't do anything else. I mean, even to this day, it's been 10 years since I've appeared as Carol. And there are people that put that label on me thinking there's nothing more that I can do.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we talked about this, but I mean, I came into the cabaret community. Well, I actually came in as Ray through Therese Ginecco when she was over at the Iridium. And I didn't sing for 15 years. I was on television. I became a producer on TV because I quickly figured out that when I was on the Food Network, if I produced my own shows, that means I got 2 paychecks and I made more money. And I'm all about that. So I learned to produce. And I didn't sing for almost 15 years. And then Therese Ginecco got to know me. She's like, you should come and sing at my show. And I sang, and oh my God, it became. And then my mom got sick. Then my mom got Alzheimer's. It came down with dementia and Alzheimer's. My dad had passed away years before. And as my mom knew she was forgetting, she opened up her life to me in a way that, I would say sometimes you shouldn't know everything about your parents, but she shared everything. And she was a powerful woman. I mean, my mom and dad were very powerful in many ways. And I wanted to tell her story because I was just trying to deal as her gay son. She was my best friend and I needed to deal. Well, I always told stories about my family. And, people always said, you should write a book. As if writing a book is so easy. So I don't know how to write a book, but I know how to write a show, and I know how to get on stage, and I'm a storyteller. So I decided I'm going to write a show. I'm just going to do it one night to sort of get it out of my head. And I was writing it, and I was trying it out, and like in the apartment on my husband, and it just didn't work. It just wasn't working. I thought, oh my God, I'm coming off as some pathetic little gay boy he's mommy. Like, it was just like, oh my God. Next, I'll be singing Sinatra songs down at the ferry. So,
and some do.
Right? Yes, I know. We need another one of those.
Yes.
So, Jim, my partner, said, why don't you do it in drag? And I thought, oh. And I thought about it. And then when I went back to it, thinking through a different mind, coming from a different angle, it all fell into place. So I thought about I'm my producer hat. What is this character? It's not just drag, it's more. I have to be something. So she ended up becoming a combination of me and my sister, because my sister was alive at the time. The stories between me and my sister became Doris' stories, and I'm Taffy and Duke's daughter. Taffy's teaching me everything she knows about the world so I can be the best housewife in the world. I did it one night at the Triad. We sold out. I remember sitting backstage at the Triad. They have that dressing room behind the stage. And I said,
for anyone who doesn't know, it's the size of a shoebox.
Yeah, tiny. But it's a dressing room. It's more than you get at some clubs.
That's true. That's true.
And I was back there and I said to Jim, just move everybody up front because I know nobody's here. I just don't want to feel like I'm playing to an empty house. He said, honey, we just turned away 30 people. I was like, what do you mean? Turned them away? Why? He says, we're sold. I was like, who even knows me? Nobody, I've never even done this before. Who's even here? Well, they asked me to come back. We sold out. Then Don't Tell Mama, Sydney Meyer came to me and said, I think you're really special. You can have the Brick Room every month, work on your show, do what you want. So every month I went in, I rewrote the show. I did do new songs and tried material. And for 6 months, I did 6 shows over 6 months, tried it out. And then I ended up 54 Below called, and I did a year at 54 Below. I did 4 or 5 shows or something. And then before I knew it, it's 6 years later, and my whole career now is doing Doris Dear on stage. So she just she's this living, I always say she's the nicer version of Ray. Is
there a bad side
political. Of Ray? She's happy. What was that?
Is there a bad side of Ray?
there's a political more, I'm going to fight for every right I think that is correct as human beings, Ray. And I don't, when it comes to Doris, I leave that alone. Doris, what I found is Doris is sort of.
Her mission in life is to entertain and to make everyone feel good.
It's to entertain. Yeah, she's like an earth, she's like the aunt everybody wants. Like, she's a place where you come in and it's, you have a cocktail or a water, and it's just a happy place. It's a place to feel good, to feel safe. So the outside world is quiet and you just come in, and she's retro, but I always try to keep her a little current in my own way of telling stories. And like, people always say, oh, I wish we lived in that time again. And I always say, oh, sure. Women couldn't get a mortgage. Gay people were beat up and fired for no reason. Oh, yeah, let's go back there. Because, yes, there was something about that time that we love and is comforting. But the reality is it was a very terrible time for people of color, LGBT people, women. So everything,
right,
but
don't you feel that even though all those things were going on in the world, and we never forget those, I mean, and especially in the last 4 years, a light has really been shown on where we've come from to get to where we are now. But when people sat down as a family to watch television, when people went to the theater, when they did all these things, they wanted to escape those realities. And I, quite frankly, don't have a problem with that.
I totally agree. I mean, yeah, there's good and bad in every decade. You can go back, and equal rights change every decade. The rights for all of us change in every decade. So there's always the good and bad. And, I've said many times, when Doris does her bits now, I mean, there's positive in COVID. I always say, let's see, everyone sitting with their family at the table. They're doing puzzles and playing cards and watching movies on their big TVs. Wait a minute. That's what we did in 1954, and 1960, and 1965. So there's, and quite honestly, when I remember my life in Staten Island and growing up with Taffy and Duke in the Rumpus Room, my memories, my strongest memories, are the times I spent with my family. Not the times I spent with the kids on the block. It's the moments of sitting at the table playing hearts with my parents and doing puzzles with my parents, or laying on the couch with mom with my head on her lap and her telling me everything's going to be okay, and watching that girl. I mean, those are the moments, those are the strong memories. So during this time right now, when we're all cooped up in the house and families are together, I keep telling, those are the moments that kids are going to remember. Those are the strong, strong memories that get into our souls. So when they get older, as bad as the COVID thing is, there is that positive aspect that I think that's what you look at. When those days where you're like, the numbers are up, more people aren't wearing masks, there's groups, there's parties, there's this, there's that. Just take a moment and look inside and say, gee, my kids are all in the next room. They're not out running around. We're going to sit and have dinner together. We're going to make a puzzle this weekend. Those are great moments. And if we focus on those, it can get us through. Family gets you through anything.
And where would
whether
you
it's
like
the family you're born into or the family you choose.
And where would you like to see Ray DeForest in 5 years?
Well, healthy enough to still be able to get out of bed. I don't know. I mean, quite honestly, I thought this theory thing was good for 2 or 3 years. And now it's 42 years later. So I'm not one for future. I don't know. I mean, look, I just keep, as an artist, like I have, Disney just laid off almost all of its entertainers down at Walt Disney World and in Disneyland. And I have friends who have literally been entertainers for 40 years, who started when I started and are still there, and they've now lost their jobs. And it's a terrible thing. But they were very lucky because that's an unusual situation for anybody in the arts. Because in the arts, we are reinventing ourselves on a day-to-day basis.
On a daily basis.
If you want to survive, if you want to make this a career, if you want to survive, you have to do that. And when I talk to kids, when I teach kids about theater and when I'm teaching acting and stuff, which I do with my friend Angela from my first summer stock and college show, I mean, I tell them, you have to reinvent yourself. If you really want to last, it's reinvention constantly. So this is just another blip, another reinvention. I'm doing my show on Broadway on demand. It's a new
that
thing.
brings me to where we are now. Before we run out of time, and we will, please tell us about your current show and how people can tune in and what's ahead for us.
So Broadway on Demand, I signed with them. We decided I'm doing a 6-episode show, Doris Dear's Gurl Talk, which has been the name of my stage show since the beginning. GURL. It's a take on an old kind of 50s talk show. And it's I produced it myself here in the Rumpus Room. And I wrote it, and it's Doris doing her advice, reading from magazines. There's a knock on the door, and I have special guests come by. I have 3 Broadway divas, an amazing jazz trumpetist and singer, a jazz drummer. I have an amazing singer-songwriter, home shopping network girl who you might know, Richard. And we have cocktails, and we talk about being artists and the positive aspects of what's happened to us. The whole show is positive. And I made it 20 minutes long because in the TV world, 20 to 21 minutes is a half-hour show if you add in commercials. So when my agents show it to producers, they say, oh yeah, that's a half-hour show. We get it. So that's what I did. And I just wanted to do something short, quick, and fun. Not expect people to stay, like I have friends who do 2-hour shows. It's like, who's watching you for 2 hours? I don't have the energy for 2 hours. Oh my God. So that's our show.
Oh, I know. I mean, we do an hour. And
yeah, it's fast. And
yeah, we do an hour, and it flies by.
And I'm going to announce right here on Richard Skipper Celebrates my big announcement, which I haven't announced yet, but I'm going to announce it here.
I get an exclusive?
On December. You got an exclusive, honey. It hasn't even been out. Hi.
I love it.
On December 19th at 9 p.m., we are doing a live stream pay-per-view of the Doris Dear Christmas show, which will be live streamed from the Triad Theater.
Oh, that's
with
wonderful.
Amazing guests, no audience. All the COVID stuff is in place. No group numbers. We have a COVID specialist, otherwise known as my husband, who will be wiping down everything that everyone touches on stage between numbers. Mm-hmm. But we're going to do a live stream. It's going to be a pay-per-view. So fingers crossed, we can try to make a little ka-ching, and I can pay my artists and pay everybody involved and pay my rent that month. But we're going to do, we really thought about it. I sat down with the Triad, and we're going to do a live stream. It's going to be very exciting. God knows what will happen. I don't know.
Well, as we get closer, I want you to put all the information on my timeline. Don't even ask. Just post it there. I'll give you that platform to get the word out about what we're doing. I can't believe this, but we are at the end of our show. And I'm a stickler for keeping things to an hour. I want to thank everybody for joining both Ray, Doris Dear, and myself today. If you enjoyed the show, and I hope you did, and if you haven't done so already, please go to my website, richardskipper.com, sign my guest book with your thoughts about the show, and let everyone know about the show. Tomorrow afternoon, and I'm going to put this up here, I have Luke Yankee, whose mother was Eileen Heckard. And he's written a book and a movie about a play about Eileen Heckard's relationship with Marilyn Monroe. We get an inside scoop on who and what she was all about. I also end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list and reach out to the first person. I know she's watching. My first person today is Bobby Horowitz, who we both love.
Oh.
And so, Bobby, call me after this interview is over, and let's pick a date for me to put you in this seat so we can celebrate you. As you celebrate everybody else in the community, I want to celebrate you. And before we sign off, Ray, I want to give you the final word. If there's anything you want to say about anything we've talked about, anything we have not talked about, or any message that you just want to put out to the world at this time, the stage is yours. And once again, thank you for all the gifts that you've given to the world and the gifts that you will continue to give. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to close with my line that Taffy taught me, and I think she got it from somebody else, but it's passing on. And it's a reminder that a dress doesn't get you anywhere. It's the life you live in the dress that matters.
Amen. Mwah.